We begin the day with the future of finance and its implications on internal audit, a panel discussion. And it's my privilege to introduce our distinguished moderator. He has worked with three of the erstwhile Big Five professional service firms and has over 32 years of experience in serving clients in a range of industries on internal audit, risk management, corporate governance, and external audit, of which 27 years of professional service have been in India, Singapore, the UK, Europe, and the Middle East. In addition, he was CFO for a diversified group in pharmaceuticals, engineering products, financial services, and IT for 5 years, and served as director on the boards of several companies. He has also led the internal audit function of a Fortune 500 subsidiary in India. He has served on the ICAI Committee for Members in Industry and the ICAI Internal Audit Standards Board, and has served 6 terms on the Board of Governors of IA Bombay Chapter. He is the Asia Pacific Regional Leader, Internal Audit for Deloitte, and leads the Deloitte India Internal Audit Practice. He is also the CFO Program Leader for India. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to our very distinguished moderator, Mr. Porus Doctor.
The topic again is the future of finance and its implications on internal audit. And we have 2 very distinguished panelists to help us navigate this journey on the future of finance and the implications on internal audit. Let me first introduce our panelists and then invite them on the stage. Our first panelist began his career as a management trainee with Hindustan Unilever in May 1993 and is currently Vice President Finance for South Asia and CFO of Hindustan Unilever Limited. He handles the financial aspects of a €5 billion business that serves the needs of 25% of the world's population and helps them to look good, feel good, and get more out of life. And internal auditors, we need to take a lesson from that based on the theme of this auditors never sleep, audit never sleeps. So I think that's very important that we actually have a good balance of life. And Balaji is going to tell us a little more about that. His previous role was as Vice President Finance for the Americas supply chain based out of Switzerland. And before that, he spent 2.5 years in London as the Group Chief Accountant of Unilever Worldwide. He was also Vice President Finance for the home and personal care business in India and Vice President Treasury for the AAR region based out of Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause for Mr. P.B. Balaji. Welcome, Balaji. Our second panelist is presently Senior Vice President and Financial Controller for Kotak Mahindra Bank. He was Head of Group Internal Audit for more than 9 years and Head of Internal Vigilance for more than 6 years. Himanshu is also a member of the Kotak Leadership Team, the second highest body within the governance structure of the group after the Executive Board, besides being a member of the first-tier boards, Committee, Information Security Committee, and Operations Risk Management Committee. He was one of the 100 CFOs who was awarded the Certificate of Recognition of Excellence at the CFO 100 Awards function conducted by the CFO magazine, prior to which he was also awarded the CFO 100 Next Award. Please welcome Himanshu Vasa. Welcome, Himanshu. Let me set a little bit of context for our discussions today, and then we can switch over to the panel. The world of finance is rapidly changing. Technology and automation are driving business today. And what do we as internal auditors need to do, as Ratul said a little earlier, to stay relevant? We need to work within the complex and continuously changing demands of business, where business, technology, social, and other dynamics are continuously challenging us to meet the increasing expectations of boards and senior management. While many internal auditors will find this difficult to keep up with the cycle of risk and controls reviews, there is no alternative. We have to stay abreast of technology. We have to work within them. A failure to demonstrate how we will add value will eventually result in stakeholders viewing us, internal auditors, as irrelevant. So what do we have to do to change this outcome? How do we change our image from being just service providers to being value providers? to being trusted advisors to management, to being trusted advisors to CFOs. Let me now hand it over to our panelists to give their opening remarks on how they see the future of finance. Balaji, over to you.
I think, thanks, Boris. Finance will undergo a change, and it's already undergoing dramatic change. And the lead for this change is coming from, first, of course, what the consumer is doing, because finally, end of the day, the business is in service of the consumers. And all of us as consumers are undergoing big shifts in the way we think, the way we operate, the way we aspire. Take India itself. If you look at the way the aspirations of people are rising, the affordability of people are rising, and the access to products which people are rising, you will see change. So that's the consumer dimension of it. If you then take that and intersperse that with the disruptions that are coming through, be it with technology, be it with the way controls, environments, governance, these standards are changing, business cannot remain exactly where it was earlier. The old ways of doing business just won't work. And there's a need for far higher transparency, there's a need for far higher standards of governance, and you then add to the mix demonetization, add GST to the mix. It basically means there's only one way of doing business, which is the right way of doing business. And it needs to be as transparent as it is possibly can be, and you cannot be embarrassed on any matter. And if you look at the scrutiny with which businesses go through, be it the media scrutiny, the regulator scrutiny, and even consumers scrutinizing you in terms of your product, what does it stand for, what is your purpose as a business. I think you just need to have a very clear purpose, adhere to the purpose, and be absolutely transparent with what you're doing and what you're not doing. So that's the game that will get played out as we go forward. In that scenario, I think role of finance, and then I'll first talk about role of finance and then come to the role of internal auditors. I think finance is being disrupted from within. Because there is this kind of challenge, intensity of competition that's happening, which means the role of business partnering which finance needs to play so that it can help the business take measured risks and actually stay away from risks that it ought not to be taking. Because end of the day, the shareholders, when they invest in a particular company, they have all the right to choose what is the kind of portfolio they want to create. So if I were to take an example of treasury, a corporate treasury has a very clear role, which is safety, liquidity, return in that order. It is not there to have taking punts in the market. It is not there for that, because if it wants to do it, the shareholder has got the right to go and invest in a bank or any other kind of market. They can play the market directly. So role of finance is to ensure the business takes those calculated risks, because inaction is also not acceptable. And then is a question of saying, now that you have allowed the business and you're helping the business take those measured risks, how do you monitor them, how do you manage performance, and how do you ensure that these risks are mitigated, and there is a clear set of governance standards that are laid out. So these twin roles that finance plays, one is around a business partner, the other around a steward, makes it really, really crucial to have people who are able to do this role simultaneously. And this is where I think internal audit comes in extremely, it works very, very closely with the finance function in that respect, because it is about saying a neutral point of view which stays outside the business and has a comment, a point of view on whether the kind of risks and controls that are operating in a business are appropriate, adequate, is it designed well, and is operating well. Which means the internal auditor needs to be really close to the business. You cannot have, my favorite saying, I can't have career internal auditors. I need to have people who are businessmen, who understand design and control, and then on that basis come and advise the business as a non-vested interest person to say that this is holding up the mirror. So that's where I see a big shift that will happen, which means everything that I talked about so far is going to come and hit the internal auditor completely. They'll have to understand how the consumer moves, how the competition is moving, how governance is moving, how risk is moving, how IT is moving. So it's probably one of the most exciting roles that is there in the company. And normally one would expect top talent to go in there, take that function, take it to the next level, and help the business take the risks. That's what I would say is a long story that I had on this.
That's a great kickoff to this session. Thank you. Himanshu, your views and give us a perspective, especially from a highly regulated industry that you're in.
Sure. Balaji has broadly covered everything, and whatever Balaji has said is absolutely equally applicable to the BFSI sector. And how many people in this room understand what is BFSI? Yeah, so a lot of you, but for those of you who don't, it's banking and financial services sector, which is anything to do and everything to do with finance. So it includes banks, insurance, NBFCs, et al. Yeah, and this industry is probably the most regulated industry. You have RBI, you have SEBI, you have IRDA, you have PFRDA, and a lot of those small regulators that you may have. So anything and everything that you do is always under scrutiny. Okay, so just to give you a sense, every transaction that happened from 8th November to 30th December, and all of us know these dates, it's cast in stone for us. Every single transaction is under scrutiny by the regulators. Okay, so that's the environment in which you are. Having said that, the role of a CFO, because we are starting off as a topic, finance and the role of internal audit in helping finance function, one must really appreciate first what is the role of a CFO in an organization. And hitherto the role of a CFO was very simply compliance, accounting, and controls. These are the three buzzwords that would be used for a CFO or a accountant, or by whatever name you may call it, in any organization. Now there is a huge paradigm shift with the environment changing. The role of a CFO is also changing. This role is now no longer these three important words of compliance, accounting, and controls. It has moved to a strategic level. A CFO is a strategic partner along with business guys and the senior management of an organization to ensure that the business objectives and the overall objectives of the organization are met. And therefore, from these three words, we can extend that to 6 words now. The 6 words being trustworthy, insightful, strategic, helping business strategy, good communication, and communication is not only within the organization but even to the external world, keeping the house in order, and insightful. So from the 3 words, we are moving to these 6 words, which encompasses the other 3 words. Now let's look at the environment in which especially the BFSI sector is operating. We all know about the demonetization. Having said that, the biggest challenge, whilst all other industries are getting impacted, the biggest challenge in the BFSI sector is the digital disruption. And all of us have heard of Jio. Yeah, that's in the telecom sector. All of us have heard of Airtel in the telecom sector, and using that sector to move to the BFSI sector with Airtel Payment Bank coming in. Think about it. You have the largest public sector bank as State Bank of India with more than 10,000 branches versus a Airtel Payment Bank having no branches but having point of sale, which are far in excess of 10,000 across the length and breadth of the country. Today, probably the largest banks in the country are opening 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 accounts, 20,000 accounts every day. Do you have a wild guess on what is the volume that these guys are looking at on a daily basis? You're talking of a volume of about 1.5 lakh to 2 lakh accounts every single day with no branch presence. That is the environment in which we are living. And therefore, it is very, very important that the CFO is pivotal and is making sure that the organization objectives of moving leaps and bounds are met with by support, not only from the financial perspective, but also the control functions which may report into him. In BFSI sector, especially in the banks, control is a separate function, risk is a separate function, compliance is a separate function. But I'm saying if all of them report into the CFO, it ultimately becomes the responsibility of the CFO. And with such a high regulated market, it's very, very important that you comply with all of them. Something going wrong in the digitization world, some control not being there in an app that is being launched, you will see crores of rupees wiped off in a couple of hours, leave alone couple of days. That's the world we are living in. So within that environment, and with the assumption that the CFO is also responsible for the control function, internal audit has a huge role to play. While there is a risk department which takes care of the risk, there is a control function. The third line of defense, which is internal audit, finally signs off that yes, everything is okay, and gives comfort to the board. The board is looking at the internal audit profession to tell them everything is right and we can sleep well tonight. With that, I'll throw it back to Porus to just take this forward.
I think you made some good points there as well, Himanshu. And to start off, Balaji was talking to us about the fact that internal auditors today need to be seen as change agents, and they need to embrace technology because, as he said, there is no option. Himanshu was talking about the evolving role of the CFO, and if I may summarize those 3 and 6 words into just 4, what you've actually said is that the role of the CFO has actually evolved from being a steward and an operator to being more of a catalyst and a strategist now, yeah, in sum and substance. What we would like to hear as an audience now is, given the points that both of you actually raised, talking about the new wave companies that are coming into play, asset-light entities, as you were talking about, the payments banks, Uber, another classic example of an asset-light entity. What are we going to expect from an internal audit perspective in terms of a mindset change when we do the audits? So let's start off with one topic, which is, I think, the most important topic, both from the future of finance as well as its impact on internal auditors, which is the role of technology and automation. How, firstly, that is going to impact the finance function, and then what is the impact going to be from an internal audit perspective? If you can just share some insights into how things like cognitive robotics are going to change the way we do our work. Balaji?
So I think I again start before we end up figuring out how it affects audit. Let's first figure out how it impacts business, because it's going to get intensely competitive. It's already competitive. It's going to be even more competitive. There's no luxury of saying that there'll be a separate way. We'll do a design, then we'll do a process, then we'll do an audit, a control design, then we'll do an audit of it. I think that is it's gone. There's no time available for doing all this one after the other. I would want to say that from day one, can you get your design right so that it is ready for reporting, it's ready for operating, and ready for controlling simultaneously. And if you start thinking in that and on that mode, IT then becomes a fundamental, it's a foundation stone on which you do this whole piece of work. And all of us have invested tons of money behind ERP platforms, be it SAP, MSG Pro, take your pick. The usage of it would be an interesting statistic for CFOs to ask for, saying that how much of that capability do we actually use, and how much of that capability do we not replicate in terms of people doing, I remember the good old Lufthansa ad, we check the checkers. And that kind of layering of control one on top of the other basically means you haven't designed it properly. So I think it's crucial that internal audit takes the role, if it really wants to be a value partner. Because accept the fact that when there are cost pressures which the business will invariably go through, the challenge will also be on internal audit function to say that get more efficient.
Absolutely.
But I would rather look at it as saying, actually you get more efficient by getting even more effective. And if you design stuff properly, you actually don't need to have an audit of the system at all. Look at the ratios of automated controls to manual controls, prevent controls to detect controls. Slowly realize we just got it poorly designed. And somehow in India, we make a virtue out of jugaad and saying that we are able to somehow make it happen like the typical Indian weddings. I don't get it. We are not placing a premium on design. And instead, we are placing a premium on being so intellectually lazy that we can manage it somehow and do a jugaad of it. Implication of that means you're going to have tons of people who are checking the checkers. Implication of this means that it's very poorly efficient. And in the world when there are these absolutely asset-light entities that are landing up, they do not have any of this baggage. They come in and say, okay, and these are young kids, and some of them, you need to see those kids to actually believe what they're able to pull off. For them, it's like the emperor doesn't have clothes. We don't know why you guys are doing all this. We just design it so simple, and you then look back at it and say that, I need to throw a lot of it out of the window. So instead of getting disrupted from outside, I would really urge internal audit to disrupt the organization from inside. Because to disrupt, you really need to know your stuff. And to know your stuff, to then turn on its head and say that, why are we doing this? How many times have we asked this question to us, to our seniors, to our stakeholders, peers, downstairs, why the hell are we doing this? Invariably, we just do because that's how it has always been done. And that is a guaranteed path to oblivion.
Himanshu?
Technological world and the digital world. Well, we are living, breathing that world today, all of us. How many of us realize that we have stopped sending SMSs to our friends and we do only WhatsApp? Yeah, most of us. Probably there will be no one in this room, probably one or two who is not or does not want to move to WhatsApp. Everyone else is on WhatsApp. Why did we do that? It's because it saves you the money. SMSs would have cost you 1 rupee per message for every message that you send, and you would not be saying good morning to your friends. Yeah? What I'm trying to drive home is it's no longer a situation where with the existing business model, how I will digitize that. It is more about now how I will use digital strategy to arrive at my business goals. If that is the fundamental that I'm working with, it's also very important, as Balaji said, to get to a situation where most of your controls are automated controls or system controls, and therefore have the least manual controls so that most of it is straight through. Given with the fact that digitization is a given for all of us, to digitize also costs money, and it costs huge amount of investment. And I'm sure even the largest of the large organizations in the world have a budget within which they need to operate, and they don't have so much money that they can also digitize and continue with the existing processes and have so many people. How many of you have a bank app on your mobile phones? Most of you? Yeah, I see most of the hands going up. Why is it that? Today, you don't have the time to go and make a payment by giving a check to a BEST or a Reliance or a BSES. You also don't want to incur the cost of writing a check and giving it to a peon because you need to invest in a peon. Today, I'm traveling from home to Westin for an IIA conference. Today is the due date. I need to make the payment. I sit into the car, put in 3 clicks, and boom, the payment is made. That is the expectation. So what am I trying to say? The stakeholder expectations are also changing. And therefore, companies around us, whether it's a consumer, BFSI, take any sector, are also automating. And therefore, the number of people are also reducing. But if you don't automate controls, the number of people that you're going to have is only going to increase. So there are cost pressures effectively. We are also into an environment where the Prime Minister of the country says, you need to go digital. And at least I'm not aware of any part of the world where there is a government-sponsored app to help you make digital payments. We have Bheem in India. And in a short span of about 3 months, you have millions and millions of people who have downloaded that app and are using that app in a secured environment. What is also important in this technological world is the speed at which the change is happening, and therefore the speed at which we as professionals need to react and change. So what is in it for internal auditors, and what is it that they need to do? Internal auditors' most important thing that they need to do is communicate and communicate well. And what do I mean by communicate and communicate well? To communicate, first you need to know the business. And as Balaji said, you need to understand end-to-end the business processes, not at a very high level at 30,000 feet. You need to know at ground level really what is happening at each activity level. And if you know that right, then as an internal auditor, whether you are in a consulting role or an auditing role, you will be able to give value-added comments. And again, mind you, the role of or the expectation from an internal auditor is also changing along with the change in the environment. It is assurance giving is a given. You know, internal auditor giving assurance is no big deal. It's like saying, you are a qualified chartered accountant, you will know what a journal entry is and what accounting is. If you are an internal auditor, giving an assurance is a given. You have to also have a strategic role. Strategic role in saying, how do you perceive risks coming to you or risks that an organization is going to face, and give value-added comments. And when I say you need to kind of communicate also at the board level by participating at various board meetings where strategic decisions are being taken. If you are not a part of it, make yourself so relevant that the management is forced to take you at that level. If the mindset is not there, get yourself involved in enterprise risk management. Have a very, very strong relationship with operational and functional level people. Because if you be an internal auditor which people are scared to come, people will not talk to you openly and freely. These are some of the basic things that I'm talking, but will go a long way in helping you carry out your normal routine work. And I strongly recommend that IIA globally has come out with a common body of knowledge, which is a CBOK, what we call, in 2016, end of 2016. It's a freely available download which has some 27 chapters or 27 different files in which various aspects of internal audit are covered. I strongly urge each one of you to download that, read that, and have, it's a 30 MB file, by the way, in a zipped format. So yes.
That's very inspiring to download, 30 MB of zipped files.
Yeah, it does not take more than 2.5 minutes.
Saying reading it.
Yeah, no, but yeah, it's, and it's so beautifully done. If you don't have the time, there are action points meant for internal auditors. So you can zip through in probably an hour.
Done.
So yes, it's imperative that in the technological world, as internal auditors, you also embrace technology. And what this can be done by using analytical tools. You see laser outside as one of the standees, where you have the GRC technological applications that are available. You can use surveys as modes of doing internal audit. So there are a lot of things. Once you look at these apps, there are a lot of apps available in the market which will help internal auditors embrace technology and guide you through the process.
Just to summarize some of the thoughts that our panelists echoed, Balaji was talking about how controls are becoming complex, and what we need to do as internal auditors is to simplify complex controls, standardize routine operations and automate them, and then eliminate what is unnecessary. And I'm just referring to last evening where I think it was Hari who was talking about freeing up bandwidth for the internal audit function to do more things, more different things, more in terms of analyzing data rather than actually reviewing data. So, with the help of cognitive technology, we can actually, instead of spending 80% of our time finding data and 20% of our time analyzing data, we can actually move the other way, spend 20% of our time just finding the data, and then spend 80% of quality time analyzing data, feeding it back to the CFOs, giving them the value that they want, giving them the dashboards, giving them the high quality reports that can enable them to take instant decisions, because then you elevate yourself in the eyes of the CFO and the board. That's really what we as internal auditors also want to do. We want to be seen to be relevant in the perception of senior management as well as the boards. Moving on to another topic, this is on risk. Clearly, risks are becoming more complex, they're becoming more intertwined. How do, and again, looking at the future of finance and seeing that that's going to even become more increasingly complex and intertwined, how do you see internal audit's role in that complex environment changing, and what different should an internal auditor do? What should we do that we are not doing today? What should we do more of, and what should we perhaps do less of to be able to free up bandwidth to do more of?
See, I think the traditional view that you first do a strategy and then do a separate risk assessment and then you have a separate work on control. Yeah. Actually, this is a bit dated, because one way to look at risk is what does it stop you from delivering on your strategy. And if you then combine risk and strategy together and then say that we do a strategy section, we understand this is where the business wants to go, and then look at the risk of that particular strategy from external view, saying that, okay, internally the strategy takes care of everything that needs to be done, and the risk is about the external overwrap of it, and then says that, okay, how do you prevent this from actually, what stops us from delivering the strategy, and what do we need to prepare ourselves for? Risk moves squarely into the business. Because the business, when it's owning the strategy, is the one that has to own the risk of it. And that, I think, fits in well with the IFC framework as well, which basically says that the risk management committee should be looking at this and reviewing it regularly. So I would bracket risk into the business and not bring it into internal audit. Once you've done that, then it frees up the internal audit to say very clearly, you guys figure out where you want to go. Let me tell you whether are you on your track to go the way you intended to go. And that then becomes a role of controls. And the beauty of doing controls that way then means that you're not confused at all. You're letting the business take its risks that it wants to do. And then you then focus on saying, what is the most effective and efficient way in which I can deliver this? The implication of this means actually, ideally, I should start with the mindset to say that, and I go back to Himanshu's view on how the banks are looking at it, which is saying that given a choice, I wouldn't want the customer to come to the bank because it's a cost. I would rather serve the bank right into the customer's hand itself in the real estate that is there in each of our hands. Same logic applies for controls as well. Given a choice, I don't want to have a control breach. I don't want to monitor it. I don't want to report on it because it is embedded. I think in this, as process designers, we haven't done a good job of leveraging access control to the extent that we ought to. We have left access control at a very rudimentary level and said that we will just give access to people as it is. If you start integrating access into your control framework itself, you will have a very, very simple way of running controls because there's no access to the system. Then the control is ingrained into it. This takes care of what I would call as 80-90% of the control. And it looks as though it's all sexy, all IT, all automated. But there's a huge danger if you go only this way because you're forgetting there is a crucial 10-20% of the controls that will always remain physical, that will always remain human, that will always remain contextual, on the ground that you have to see there. It is important that that is given the due importance in the organization and taken up to a very high level. Here I'm talking about simple stuff like when I run factories, I would definitely want people to visit the scrapyard. The scrapyard tells you stories of a factory that nothing will tell you. Yep. The cash in a setup, the cash impress, how much ever we go demonetization and out, there will still be that final cash. Sure. There will be that final weighbridge that is there, which somebody has to physically go and see. This is what I would call as the irreducible minimum set of physical controls, which actually prove that the rest of the controls actually work. Now, if you look at it this way, then you'll realize that the job from a control perspective becomes highly automated, but light touch, surgical strikes on physical controls, you come out. This will actually help you do 2 or 3 things. One is, one of the biggest challenges, and Hari keeps telling me this, is youngsters don't want to travel, you don't want to live off a suitcase all the time. And a lot of our internal auditors, when they are going out into the market, they are living off a suitcase for many days on end. Youngsters don't want to do it. They have their family, they have their girlfriends, they have their boyfriends, they have their fathers, they have their extracurriculars that they want to get onto. How are you going to attract talent? And that talent will not join. If you do not have the best talent lining up to join this function, the function will become irrelevant. So we will need to rediscover the employee value proposition for the internal audit function so that the best guys want to come and work on it, learn from it, and at the same time are able to contribute to the extent that we want to, which is where I believe it's a mix of ruthless automation and surgical strikes will give us a blend, which people see, I'm not doing stuff that is not value adding, but I'm doing real stuff that make a difference. And the day youngsters realize that the work that they're doing is making a real difference, and it's also a real difference to the organization and to themselves, they would join in droves, which is how I believe we'll need to crack this problem.
So what you're basically saying is that 80% of those risks, once they're highly automated, you free up your bandwidth on that 20%, which is probably what you would call the more vulnerable areas of business, which are prone to manual controls, prone to collusion and fraud, or possibility of collusion and fraud, and then spend your time trying to attack those areas because they will never be able to be fully automated and you will always be exposed to some extent.
Yeah, and also a sense of what I would call as the qualitative side of it. There has to be a real sense. When you walk the shop floors, what you learn, you will never learn from seeing the control sheet in front of you. So have those conversations, get physical, get out there and speak to the workers, speak to the salesmen. You will learn things about the business that you will never realize that's the way it's happening on the ground.
Right. Manchu, your perspective?
I think we are in a world where the terminology VUCA is very relevant. VUCA being volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Having said that, I think from a banking or BFSI perspective, it's also important for each one of us to understand what the sector is all about and how other external factors impact the risks of an organization. Just to give you a simple example, everyone knows that in a banking space, one of the key activities is lending. And if you see a large concentration of lending in a particular sector, a change in external environment can cause huge amount of disruption in the way the bank is lending, or can give hundreds and thousands of people sleepless nights. The impact of things like the budget or the monetary policy on the bank itself or to the sectors that it is lending. All of us hear that the RBI governor, there are a lot of speculations just before monetary policy that you will see a 25 bips drop and the market starts reacting, and then he does not announce it and you see the stock market crashing like crazy. You see it 600, 700, 800 points crashing in a single day. Now, why does that happen? And what is the implication of all these external environments to the business in which you are operating or to the business in which you are servicing your customers? So it's very important for you to understand all of this. Similarly, external risks like, opening up the banking license to smaller banks. Now earlier you have full-fledged banks, now you have payment banks who only deal in payments, then you have small banks, and then from a once in 10 years opening up, giving banking licenses to on-tap licenses. It's changing the environment. It's change in the environment. And what is it going to impact the bank, and how is it going to impact the strategy with which the bank deals? And I will be only able to comment because most of my life I have spent in the BFSI sector, so my comments will be restricted to that. Opening of accounts. Today, to open an account, you go to a bank, you give your KYC documents, either your passport, your, one of those 8 documents, photograph, then it will go 10 days later, you will get a letter saying that this is your bank account number. 2, opening an account on your iPad using biometrics, hopefully you have an Aadhaar card, and therefore using biometrics, you can open an account in 30 seconds with an account number coming to your email box within 2 minutes and being able to operate in the 3rd minute. Now that's the environment again, and therefore it's important that one understands the risks. And given that context of risk, what is it that we as internal auditors need to do? As I said, know the business better. Be a part of risk management exercise. I'm not saying that you are responsible for risk management, but at least be a part of that exercise. And if the organization that you are servicing does not have risk management, help them build the framework and help them mature. And that's what you will be able to do at the next level. Obviously, be very clear that you are the 3rd line of defense, and you should not get into the 1st line and the 2nd line of defense, because that will be a big disaster. Besides that, for organizations that are mature, and for specifically listed entities, if you are auditing any one of them, Clause 49. You had Sarbanes-Oxley in the US, equivalent of that is Clause 49, which means that the entire risk is very well documented. Use that as a tool to build up your plan, the risk-based audit plan. All of us talk of risk-based audit plans at the beginning of the year. Now, does that actually dovetail into the risks that have been identified by the organization? Coming back to Clause 49, I think you can use that as a big tool to make sure that you understand risks and you are aware of how the risks have been documented. Ensure that your risk-based plan is dovetailed, and there is a sense of rigidity, and a survey shows that about 60% of the risk-based plans are never changed from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So if a risk-based audit plan is set at the beginning of the year, you will continue with the plan till the end of the year. You need to change the risk-based plan if there is a change in environment. If there is a change in risk perception about a particular risk, dump the risk-based plan, look at what the risks are, and concentrate and focus on those risks. These are some of the key messages as internal auditors we need to be mindful about.
Balaji, you briefly alluded to my next question, and I think it is probably one of the more important aspects that we want to hear and discuss, which is on talent. Clearly, one of the biggest changes that is going to happen with the rapid advances in technology and automation is going to be a direct impact on talent. If that talent is not adequately skilled, it may no longer be relevant. And so how do both of you look at the impact of hiring and retaining the quality of talent that would be required to serve the finance function of the future, especially from an internal audit perspective?
It's really difficult to be generic about it. I can talk about how we think about it in Hindustan Unilever. For us, we recruit as a pool of talent. We never recruit for a specialization in a particular function because it's difficult for me to give a full-fledged career in that particular area. Yeah. So our going in position is just by and large, we'd try to recruit as a pool. Once you have recruited as a pool, one thing which you are very, very conscious of is to rotate the talent across all possible roles within the setup. So our value proposition when you go out to the market and hire the best talent is, number one, we give you experiences across the full end-to-end business. And with finance being the way we have designed it as the business partnering role and the stewardship role, the roles finance is plugged into every aspect of the business, be it supply chain finance, CD finance, customer development finance, brand finance, media finance, procurement finance, treasury, accounting, controls. So this talent has got almost like a buffet breakfast that is there in front of them in terms of what they want to pick and choose. Once we fitted that piece right, what we then said is, hold on, this is what is available on offer. But we also want to be sure, and so that we understand what is the real talent all about. And therefore, we are very keen to understand what's the purpose of that particular talent. What does the talent really want to do? What is the talent sweet spot? When does the talent really enjoy working? What are the kinds of roles in which the talent actually does not enjoy working? And it is important to be cognizant of that, because we can't shape everybody into saying, thou shalt move this way. It doesn't work that way. End of the day, we are all human beings. So objective of us is to say that, and the challenge which I have taken upon myself, and it's my call, is, can I give customized careers for each and every one of my talent, depending on what's the kind of purpose, what does it really moves that particular talent? And we believe with the kind of supply on offer in terms of roles, we can do this. So that's the first value proposition on which we build this edifice. Once you've got that piece right, moving closer to internal audit, two things. Invariably, internal audit is led by people across time, and Hari is one of the people who are out there who had extensive experiences who moved around this entire piece before they come and head that particular function. Second, we are now, and it's been on Hari's initiative, it has been started, saying that early on we want to give people exposure into audit, because audit has got a particular way of looking at things which needs to be learnt. In a business, you have a very different mindset on which we operate. Audit is about always thinking about what could go wrong. And I had a great prof who put it very nicely, and it's probably the most eloquent way of putting it, where he says that any process, please look at it as an engineer's design and an economist's design. If you get these two designs right, you're sorted. So what do you mean by that? Is that an engineer fundamentally believes that people are honest, but people are stupid. So they need to be held with process, automation, and everything. It's very intuitive for us, yeah, that makes sense. But the economist fundamentally believes that people are intrinsically dishonest and very clever. And therefore, they are fundamentally looking at how to break the chain in all this. And if a process design goes through both these loops, actually you're sorted, you're figured out from both sides. I think the internal audit function helps you think like that particular thinking, saying people are intrinsically clever but dishonest, versus an engineer who basically believes people are honest. Both are important in a function, in a business. You don't know what you're going to be hit with. And so getting that exposure of internal audit helps people think the other way. And once they have figured out how to think the other way, I think they become much better businessmen, and they need to be moved out. One thing which I'd want to be very careful when I do an organization design and internal audit, let's not make it a swamp where everything comes and stops there. We need people from internal audit to go out into the business, because they can add tremendous value back into the business because they have learned stuff that things are there. And that's something which you're very, very conscious of when you build this talent. So that takes care of the talent proposition. And then is the earlier one in terms of we need to take care of the hygiene factors. Sure. We can't just work them to death. We need work-life balance for those people as well. And it is important that leadership take cognizance of the kind of hours put in by these people. But otherwise, after a point in time, it's just not worth it. And if it's not worth it, why will they stick with us?
I'm just looking at the theme right behind me, which says audit never sleeps.
I think that's more a metaphor rather than physical. If it gets physical, we have a problem.
The perception of the internal audit profession in the good old days used to be not required, transfer him to internal audit. Yeah. I think that is age-old days. If people are carrying that perception, they're completely wrong. People want to do internal audit. And I think it's important that we carry this message clearly to one and all across all sections of people. Having said that, over the last probably 15 years of my career, I may have recruited about 300 plus internal auditors. Yeah. And I can tell you that if the organization gives you that bandwidth, and if you make the organization realize that internal auditors are that pool of talent who can not only deliver when you want them, but also be a resource pool which you can draw upon to give careers in business to various people. I think that's the best situation to be in. In large organizations like Hindustan Lever, do you know that if you have not gone through a stint in internal audit, you cannot be a part of senior management team? And there are many such organizations globally. Now, that is from a bank's perspective or a large organization perspective. What about from a service provider's perspective? And that's the point that I'm going to deal with more. I think from a service provider's perspective, resources are scarce, given the fact that there are cost constraints because of the environment in which or the business model in which you are dealing with. Besides that, once you have the resource, to retain that resource, you have to invest in that resource, because that resource is ultimately going to see what is the benefit I am getting out of it, what is my growth. So the first and foremost is to invest in that resource by helping him or her upscale their core competencies. By making sure that you are training them in various aspects in which at least you want them to perform. Give them the tools to perform, create that environment to perform, create that work-life balance to perform. All these are very, very important. Also, from a service provider's perspective, you need to be careful and you need to recruit people basis your need assessment. You need to assess your needs first as to why you need a person in that position. Today, for an organization that is for possibly servicing a airline industry, a internal auditor being a set of accountants is not going to help. You need to have an engineer who knows or can add value to the function that you are performing. In an airline industry, do you know how to, from an engineering perspective, there is a huge cost. Fuel is a huge cost. I think the single largest cost in an airline industry is the fuel. Now, do you have somebody in your team who can bring value to that aspect of the industry that you are servicing? Very, very critical. So create that environment for the people to stick around. And I would leave it with 3 thoughts to summarize it. Assess the talent, train the talent, and invest in the talent. If these 3 points are taken care of, I think the landscape is very large. The talent will get attracted, and you will not have to go hunting. The talent will come seeking jobs from you.
Excellent. Balaji, just one clarification. When you spoke about the way internal audit suspicious in a sense of carrying out its work. I think it's the philosophy we actually follow is trust but verify. And just to, in fairness to our colleagues out here. So in closing, I think we're pretty much on the hour now. A quick thought in terms of what is the specific value proposition that you believe internal auditors should bring to the table as CFOs? I mean, as you would want to see it from their perspective. What value proposition would really matter to you?
I think a neutral view on what is exactly happening on the ground is what I look to my team for.
I think from my perspective, as a CFO, internal audit will be my extended arm of telling me that everything down there is going right and that there are adequate controls which are operating effectively, which will help me move my focus as a CFO from being worried about controls to moving to a strategic level.
I'd like to thank both our panelists. I think it was a really stimulating discussion. Great points of view. Hopefully a lot of food for thought for the audience. Thank you very much, both of you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for our experts, Mr. P.B. Balaji, Mr. Himanshu Vasa, and our very erudite moderator, Mr. Porus Doctor. We'll request them to receive a small token of appreciation and gratitude from us. May I request Mr. Sunil Gaitonde, President IIA Bombay Chapter, to kindly do the honors and present these mementos. To Mr. P.B. Balaji. Mr. Himanshu Vasa. And Mr. Porus Doctor. And there's something more, sir. Those were specific to each recipient, because these are general. And could we have a photograph with all of you? Center stage. Sir, photograph. Thank you, Mr. Gaitonde. Thank you, Mr. Doctor. Thank you, Mr. Vasa. Thank you, Mr. Balaji.